Hey guys, my name is Haskell Sides, and today I'm presenting my oral presentation project for English 231. I was assigned the letters to the American farmer in our textbook, so let's get right into it. I want to start out by beginning by talking with the life in the European and before people migrated over to the Americas. They were controlled by monarchs, and the poor couldn't live, freely. They had to work for everything that they had, work very hard. And they didn't own a lot either. People who own land had power, and not a lot of people own land in these big cities. They had castles and big mansions in these cities that they lived in, and conditions just weren't that good. Disease was really bad in these cities because people lived very close to each other, and sanitation was awful. And just life wasn't really that good living in these monarchs and these castles. The bulk of the letter in the middle is talking about how just how they lived in the early Americas. The men, they worked for themselves. They didn't work for a king. They owned their own land, and they worked that land to make money and live, basically, or essentially. It also said that they went to church every Sunday, so they lived very. They were very dignified, and the way they lived. So a lot of the early settlers, they spread out, across 13 sections in the Americas. The cities were slowly starting to form. They had schools built and libraries, and people were starting to learn to write. And more churches were built. And like I said, with the roads being built, transportation was a little bit easier, so they could share crops. And laws and a government were starting to be implemented in these areas, and a lot of it was not influenced by the monarch. They had their own kind of set of laws that they created for themselves. So basically, that kind of sums up the letters to the American farmer story. In my opinion, it was more like based on how this guy, he described American life, and he really was proud of being American over living in the European monarch countries. Like I said, he just went into huge detail about the flourishing wildlife and the open land, and how people own their own land and were able to live on their own, as opposed to living under somebody's rule. So after doing a little bit of research on the author, John Hector, he was called Saint John. Basically, he did write this letter for a protest against the monarchs. Basically, he just, like I said, he was describing life as a farmer and the open land, and he kind of, meant for people to read this and want to rise up against, I guess England was the country he was opposing, and creating their own laws and not having to live under their order. Basically, he developed a huge love for his country and wanted to leave England behind because he had a lot of his heart invested in the Americans. So outside of John Hector's letter to the American farmer, something that kind of relates to this, story in a way, that we've studied in class, or the assignments that I chose, is the kind of like the bad side to the Americas is a lot of the prejudices and like superstitions were brought from Europe to America through like the Salem witch trials, and some of the stories that we read. People were very superstitious of witches at this time too, and that just was kind of like a dark kind of time. If you've ever read any of the stories, around the Salem witch trials. Another thing too is I read a story about how a farmer lost everything in a fire. Basically, people had a great fear of fire back in those early days, because if your house caught on fire, it was entirely made of wood, so you would lose everything that you had, and all your belongings. So there was a big, heavy fear of fire back then. So we have reached the end of my presentation video now, and my question basically that I'm asking after reading the story is, do I, as an American, strive to make America a better place like they did back in the day? I just think that after reading the story, we can all ask that, because these people just fought really hard, to make America a better place in their own kind of country. And sometimes you just got to kind of ask yourself, do we still have that drive to push our country to its limits and make it the best we can? All right. Thanks, guys, for watching.